Okay, this is going to be part one of the Catherine Heagen farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. And this is the grave of Catherine Little Hagin, who died on January 29th, 1864 at the age of 76 years old. Now, as we look at her house in our next part, we'll tell you a little bit about her during the Battle of Gettysburg. But she had married Henry Hagin, and he had passed away in 1848. And there's his grave just to the left. Catherine lived along the Baltimore Pike, which is the road that you see the cars going on here, about a mile and a half away from here, on the same side of the road, across from the McAllister's Mill area. And during the Battle of Gettysburg, Catherine would leave her home and go to a place that she thought was safer, which actually ended up being more dangerous, and that would be the Sherfy farm, where on July 2nd the battle raged around her. Catherine would be walking out behind the house during the battle, and a bullet would go through her skirt, harmlessly falling to the ground, and she would pick it up and put it in her pocket, making Catherine Little Hagin the very first relic collector during the Battle of Gettysburg. She collected relics from the Battle of Gettysburg during the Battle of Gettysburg. And she is buried here at the historic White Church here along the Baltimore Pike. And I did a video on this church, which is also the site of a divisional field hospital. And you'll want to go back and watch that video. But if you walk around the southern side of the church here near the steeple and follow this wall down to the very last window, her grave sits right here next to her husband. And in our next couple parts, we're going to see her house, which is very difficult to locate, and if you don't know anything about it, you may not even find it. But we'll take you to her house. We'll go around down the original farm lane that was from her house that Union soldiers used during the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. And then we will end at the Sherfy house, where she was hit in the skirt by a mini ball and collected it, making her the first battlefield relic collector. This has been a video on Catherine Little Hagin here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours with Frank P. Marone Jr. as your historian. Frank from Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. And I am here in a spot that hardly anyone knows of. This old, dilapidated wood house that's been boarded up sits in a spot that you would think would be known. Right there, if you can hear the traffic going by, is the Baltimore Pike. And just on the other side of that house would be the old Mulligan McDuffer's golf course and McAllister's Mill Road. And then just over here is Powers Hill. This is the house of a woman named Catherine Little Hagin. Now, Catherine was born on December the 28th, 1783. So she was 76 years old during the Battle of Gettysburg. She was a widow. Her husband, Henry, died back in 1848. And she was living in this house during the Battle of Gettysburg here along the Baltimore Pike east of Powers Hill. Now, her daughter married Joseph Sherfy. And with Union troops all around this area, because again, the Baltimore Pike was a main route of supply, a supply depot line, rather, for Union troops on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1863, as the troops and supplies made their way from the area of Westminster, Maryland. Seeing a lot of troops around her on July 1st, she decided to skedaddle from her house and go to an area that would actually become more dangerous. She would leave here and go to the Sherfy farm out along the Emmitsburg Pike, where heavy fighting at the peach orchard on July 2nd, 1863, would go all around her. This has been part 2 of the Catherine Hagin farm here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. Part 3 of the Catherine Hagin farmhouse. And I will post a picture of the area that Catherine lived in. But if you look on the picture that I post, you'll see a road or a farm lane that led from the house and went out toward the Granite Schoolhouse Road. And Powers Hill is just over here in the distance. The modern road that goes by Powers Hill was not there in 1863. This was the original 1863 roadbed. So we're walking along the road that would have went by the Catherine Hagin farm, which is behind us now, out toward and alongside of Powers Hill, out toward the Granite Schoolhouse Road. And not many people know this is here. It's a few years ago, it looks like the Civil War Trust purchased or got a hold of the property. And I guess it will eventually be a part of the National Park Service if the funds are there. But right here is the original trace of the road that went from the Catherine Hagin farm out to the Granite Schoolhouse Road. And the Granite Schoolhouse Road is the one you see there in the distance with the stone wall. And again, Powers Hill is right here. This is the modern road that comes off from the Baltimore Pike, which was not here in 1863. So this has been part 3 of the Catherine Hagin house here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours. The Joseph Sherfy farm. And this is the area that Catherine Little Heagen, when she left her house, as we seen in our last video, she headed here on the evening of July 1st, 1863, over to the Sherfy farm, which her daughter had married into the Sherfy family, thinking that it was going to be safer. Now, during the battle on July 2nd, Confederate troops advanced from the wood lines in the west, and in this particular area was the charge of General Barksdale's brigade and his Mississippi brigade. Somewhere during that action, Heagen behind the house had got curious and walked out into this area, and she was immediately struck by a mini ball which went through a part of her skirt. Seeing the mini ball on the ground, Catherine Heagen reached down, picked it up, and put it in her pocket, technically making her the very first battlefield relic collector. As we know and have heard of battlefield relic collectors in the past, such as J. Howard Wirt, one of the earliest battlefield relic collectors, Heagen actually collected relics during the Battle of Gettysburg. This has been a video on Catherine Little Heagen here on Gettysburg Historic Walking Tours.